Hello and welcome to 60 Minutes or Less, a new podcast from Birthday Cake for Breakfast. I'm Andy Hughes and it's a swift introduction today as for our 10th episode, we've gone lengthy with the one and only Jamie Lenman. We spoke with Jamie midweek over Zoom to discuss his new book, Skeletons and Skylines, 25 Years of Art, Design and Rock and Roll. Available from the 22nd of May 2024, it acts as a visual showcase of his music-based artwork, both for his own projects, as one-third of cult heroes Reuben and then as a solo artist, as well as those created for other outfits. Someone we've spoken to a number of times over the life of Birthday Cake for Breakfast, it's always a delight to shoot the shit with Lenman, and I'm sure you'll enjoy his hot takes on the Beatles, his retirement, Doctor Who and his favourite band, Reuben. Enjoy.
La, 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 la.
You look like you've just stepped out of the spa. You're looking very swanky.
Thank you. No, I had to put my dressing gown on for you, or you would be frightened by my muscular body because I've just finished a workout.
I did wonder why you were tilting the camera down then. I thought you were going to show me something.
No, I'm not going to show you nothing. This is all you get.
How you doing, man? You okay?
Yes, I'm good. Yes, my head's absolutely reeling because I've just had a phone call with my editor at Doctor Who magazine, and he's got lots of ideas for a new Doctor Who magazine special, and he's asked me to pitch for it, and that's obviously a very exciting time, and you get to think, oh, what could I do? Because last time I managed to pitch, how about I draw every single outfit that Tom Baker wore in 7 years? And they went for it, so I got paid to draw that, which is great. And now I'm thinking, I might pitch a one-man recreation of the lost Doctor Who radio show. There's a half-hour script for a radio show that they did with Peter Cushing in 1965, but it's been lost. And so my pitch is going to be, how about I recreate it with me doing all the parts? So that's whizzing away there. But otherwise, I'm great. How are you? What's that tattoo on your arm there? It looks cool. Oh, it's enormous.
That's my dog.
Yeah, it's a bit cubist, right?
Yeah, definitely. That's not me. That's some guy. Yeah, it's pretty cool, right?
It's just your dog hanging out with some guy.
Just my dog. He might become audible on the podcast, by the way. I'll try and...
I hope so. This is a podcast, is it?
Yeah. it could just be a phone call. No, it's a podcast, but we won't do video. We'll just stick to audio. So today is May the 8th, and it's a big day because that Beatles film, Let It Be, has just come on Disney Plus. I don't know whether you saw that.
Hey, is this the podcast? Are we doing this now? Are we shooting this shit about Let It Be? Because I got notes.
For Let It Be, the film.
Well, no, yes, but also... okay, so here we go. So Let It Be was famously filmed... I think it was Michael Lindsay Hogg. I could be wrong about this. He filmed the Beatles like basically breaking up over a period of several weeks. First at some horrible studio and then later on back at Abbey Road. And all we knew of it before Get Back, the famous Peter Jackson series, was Let It Be, which is 90 minutes of arguably the worst moments. Like, Michael Lindsay Hogg went and picked all the worst moments where they're getting on so badly, and it's so boring to watch. It's horrible because it's never been seen since its cinema release in the 60s, right? But obviously I got a copy, a bootleg copy, and it's just nasty. It's not an enjoyable experience. So then when they did Get Back, the series, I thought the pitch was, hey, remember how nasty Let It Be was? Those were the worst bits. Here's all the really good bits. It was actually fun. They enjoyed each other's company. And so that's what Get Back was, all the other bits. 9 fucking hours of the rest of it, the good bits, right? So why then would you go back after that and be like, oh, and here's the shit bits remastered? You're like, what? We don't need... I thought Get Back was a replacement for the wretched pile of trash that is Let It Be. But now they're like, oh no, also watch Let It Be. I'm not going to watch Let It Be again. So I'm very confused. Unless I've missed a trick. But is that... I mean, that's nuts, isn't it?
I watched it over lunch today and it was very... Yeah, I was like, oh, right, okay, so it's not exciting and it's...
boring is the worst crime.
It is quite boring. The rooftop stuff is great, obviously. Performing with Billy Preston, that's great.
Yes.
But I did read a bit and they said, like, there's a jump between them at Abbey Road and them at this studio. And it's clear that there's been a massive jump, not only in the editing, but also just the fact that they're all actually happy when they're at Abbey Road and they're miserable
Yes.
in the studio.
It gets a lot better, and I can't remember if no, it was they brought Clapton in on the White Album, didn't they? And then they brought in Billy Preston on there. And here's the thing about Billy Preston, is that people always say, "Oh, who's the fifth Beatle?" You know, who's the fifth Beatle? It could be. I mean, it's probably George, the producer, because he played so much on their records and whatever. And I don't think those records would have been the same without George Martin. But if you're looking for good candidates, Billy Preston, like, what do you call a guy who joins your band for a whole album and arguably a live tour, even though if that live tour was just one performance on a roof, playing a different instrument that none of the rest of you play, playing his own parts, who's involved from the songwriting at pretty much every level? I'd call that an official band member. And I love the fact that, like, the fifth Beatle is this American guy, like, from a different tradition. I think that makes the Beatles so much more exciting. And I wish Billy Preston was in, the Beatles. The Beatles should be five guys. It should be John, Paul, George, Ringo, and Billy. I love that. And I think Billy's contribution is critically underrated. A lot of the do-do-do-do, the organ licks that characterize so much of Let It Be, that's pure Billy. And in the same way that, there would have been no Beatles without George Martin, there would be no Let It Be without Billy Preston. You have mistakenly touched on a hot point of I'm like a Beatles fanatic and a Billy Preston mega fan. Yes, I think he should be in all the pictures of the Beatles, those guys, and then Billy. Excellent.
I think I think that'd be great if they went back into all the old Beatles photos and went, oh, and Billy Preston was there. He was just in the background. As well, like, I think it's probably Get Back made him seem a lot more, like you say, like part of the band, didn't it? And it also made Ringo seem a lot more, it gave him a lot more credit, I thought, than what people are always cliched, they say about him.
Well, do you know what? I haven't seen Get Back. And lots of people said to me, oh, you got to watch Get Back. And I was wary for two reasons. Number one was because I'd seen Let It Be. And even though I understood, no, Get Back is the happy stuff, Let It Be is the sad stuff, I didn't really want to revisit that scenario. But the other reason that I didn't want to watch Get Back, and most of the people saying, oh, you should really watch it, in fact, all of them, were people that have never been in a band. And if you've never been in a band, it might very well be interesting to watch four people like bang their heads together for 9 hours trying to come up with a song. Maybe that's fascinating. But having done that for 25 years, I have zero want to relive that experience. I don't want to do it myself. I certainly don't want to watch my heroes do it. I'm sure if you've never been in that situation, it's a fascinating document. But for me, absolutely no way. That's my life, man. Not being in the Beatles.
Spread across 9 hours as well.
Yeah, I don't know for more than 9 hours, but yeah, I don't want a concentrated dose. Yeah.
So the last time we spoke, this is the moving on from the Beatles part of the podcast.
Damn it.
We can return to it.
Yes.
You were headlining your own mini festival in Manchester, and now we're in 2024 and live shows are off the table.
Yeah.
A lot has changed since then, obviously, but, as it should for anyone that's moving forward with their life and doing different things. So does it seem a really long time ago since you did the festival, or?
Oh, God, yeah. and so you're talking about Lenman and 3, right?
In Manchester, yeah.
Buddy, I can't remember you being there, and please don't take offence because my head, at Lenmanias especially, at live shows is one thing, and Lenmania, I do not know where I am. I don't know what is up and what is down. Did we have a chat? Did we do an interview?
We did. That makes me feel good. Yeah, we did an interview, but fair play, you were right before you were about to go on stage and you were like, can we do this afterwards? Because I'm
yes.
My head's about to explode.
Yes, because I felt bad. Before or after the acoustic bit? Or before, no, yeah, must have been after the first act, the acoustic bit. Yeah, I must have felt much better. I mean, to be fair, and now you remind me, I do remember it, and I do remember saying that. But Lenmania, that third one actually was my favourite of all the Lenmanias. In fact, that was one of the best gigs I can remember, both playing and as an audience, because the whole concept of Lenmania was that, like, I book my favourite bands, right? And I used to do this. We used to do this with Reuben as well. We used to do Christmas shows where we'd book our favourite bands, and then we wouldn't get to fucking see them because we were either like warming up or doing interviews or whatever. So it's a false premise, but amazingly, at Lenmania, like Lenmania 1 was a nightmare, start to finish. Lenmania 2 was difficult because it was at Trees and I had problems with my voice. That was a real bummer. But Lenmania 3 actually lived up to the promise. Against all odds, it was very stressful to put together, maybe the most stressful of all of their manias. But then when it came to the actual day, everything just went sweet as a nut. And the best thing was that I got to see like all the bands. On every stage, there's only 2 stages, there was a little bit where I could kind of hang out at the side and like watch all the bands, and the people in the other bands that were there, they were all my friends as well, so we were all watching the bands together, and it was just like it used to be back at the very first shows I played with Reuben, where like half the audience were in either the bands that were playing that night or in other bands on the scene, and we would all go en masse to watch each other's bands because we just loved the music. We loved the bands, we loved music, we loved each other. And so Lenmania 3 accidentally became a little hark back to that, where it's just a bunch of musos enjoying music, and I felt like we'd finally created something really beautiful. And there's a clip that went on my Instagram of, we did Christmas presents for everybody afterwards. So I brought Christmas presents for everyone, and I was already dressed as Santa, I think. And so I'm going to do a sneeze, which would be bad for your podcast. Hold on a sec. Oh, there you go. We did Christmas presents for everyone, and that was joyous. And then we all sang Here It Is, Merry Christmas in the car park, and somebody filmed it. That crystallized, really, that was the high point of that whole campaign. It was all downhill from there. So the last time you spoke to me, I was feeling quite happy about my lot, and since then, oh my God, the tour just went off the rails, and then I quit. Yeah, what was the question? Sorry.
It was about Let It Be. No, so it was, it was talking about that, and I mean, it does feed into, in February this year, you announced that outside of possible future festival appearances, that's pretty much it for live shows, and you're retiring. So you said that the past decade, whilst it's been really rewarding, has been physically and emotionally draining. So I'm gathering that this is the case from what you've just said, but you noted in the video that it had been a decision that had been made 6 months prior. Did it just feel, as soon as you said, that's it, I'm not going to do it anymore and I will make the announcement, did it feel like such a weight had been lifted off your shoulders, and that you didn't really have to have that possible anxiety anymore?
Well, it was more gradual, but yes, I mean, it was what you're saying, but it was very gradual. And it's the same thing that happened with the band as well when I quit the band, because the first people hear of it, it's like, an announcement, whatever, be it my video about my retirement, or I think our manager made an announcement the band's split up. Everyone's like, oh my God, all of a sudden. And you're like, no, I'm not going to do a post, 2 years before the fact to say, I'm feeling a bit bad about this today. I might not want to do this forever, and then gradually inform everyone of your deteriorating mental state. So, of course, you only hear an on and an off, and maybe it takes some people by surprise. But the actual decision, I mean, with the band, I was trying to quit the band basically from when the first album came out, and very often people would say the same thing. It was a downward slide from there. And with my solo career performing in that respect, if you talk to Jacko, my drummer, he has been listening to me say, like, this is my last one ever since we've worked together. So ever since Shuffle, I was like, I ain't doing this no more. And then I sort of made it through another couple of records. So it was a very gradual process. And then I guess when it started to become a reality after the Atheist tour, I'd just been pushed so far. I was like, you know what, that's never happening again. I'm never climbing into that van again. I'm never walking into that venue again. I still had to convince myself. I had to convince my manager. My manager didn't want to hear about it. Everyone said, oh, you're just tired. Oh, take a break. See how you feel in a couple of weeks. And I was like, okay. And that was their duty to say that. But I knew how I would feel. But I still had to kind of convince myself after I'd mentally made that decision, was it really going to happen? Because tantalizing offers come in all the time, And even after I'd said, look, I'm not doing this anymore, I would get another offer and it sounded really fun. And, and I was like, no. And actually, the moment that I knew it was done was when I refused a very lucrative, shall we say, offer to do a show. It would have been in Easter time. But that came in towards the end of last year, and I was like, you know what? No, I'm not going to do that. Even though I could really use the money, and it sounded like easy and fun potentially. That's when I was like, no, I ain't going to do it. And so, yes, at that point, that's when I knew it was fine. It was between talking to my manager at the end of the Atheist tour and refusing that offer. It was a gradual process where that weight would lift. And yeah, the last bit when I was like, actually, no, I'm not doing that show because guess what? I'm not doing anymore ever. That was the final pebble. So instead of like one big weight, it was gradual pebbles flying off, and that was the last pebble, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, like you say, it came as a shock, I'm sure, to people, but you've obviously had this gradual thought process. Was it quite nice, having this sounds like a strange thing to say, but having this outpouring of love for what you had done and agreement from people that said, not, you always get people post on Facebook, like when someone announces a tour, they're like, come to Brazil, rather than people go, don't retire. Everyone was like, it's your physical and mental well-being, you do you, in short. Was that quite kind of nice to have that outpouring?
It was great. I mean, the thing is, I didn't really want an outpouring, and I was very wary of how that news had to be handled because I felt I needed to tell people, like, I'm drawing a line for various reasons, but I didn't want it to be like a big shocking thing. But I guess it was always going to be to an extent. I didn't want it to be like dramatic. But then, everyone was like, Lenman retires, and like, oh my God. And then what happened was that a lot of people I got a lot of very lovely messages, but a lot of them were like eulogies, as if I died. People were like, we've lost an immense talent. And I was like, I'm still alive, So some of it was like that. Some of it was a bit eulogic, if that's a word that I've just formed, which was nice but weird in a sort of living funeral type way. Most of it, as you say, was incredibly supportive. And people were saying, hey, man, you got to do what makes you happy. I'm bummed, but I'm happy for you, which is that's such a leap, isn't it? Not only for people within ourselves to recognize, personally, I'm sad about this, but I'm happy for someone else. That's a big emotion to feel. And I'm proud of people, and I'm proud of myself when I can recognize that's bad for me, but it's good for you, But also for the internet, which is a different, as a whole, the internet is a screaming toddler, right? And so for the internet to be able to say, you know what, good for you, was amazing. And I don't think I got one. I don't think I got one negative comment. So a couple of people were like, what about one goodbye show? And I was like, guys, that's not quite the deal. So yes, it was lovely to have that outpouring. My main worry was that because I'm going to keep doing stuff, and if I do make a festival appearance or even a record at some point, it's not out of the question. I wouldn't want people to be like, hey, you said you'd retire. I bought into the whole fact, and I mourned you, and I dug a grave for you, and what's this? I want to leave the door open a little bit. I want to be able to do what I want. But that's a mistake we made with the band. That's exactly what we did with the band. We said, hey, it's not a split. It's an indefinite hiatus because we wanted to leave the door open just in case we felt like doing something, because we didn't want, if we ever came back, which we're not going to do, we wouldn't want everyone to be like, hey, you said you'd never come back. And as it turns out, there was going to be a kerfuffle either way. So there's a danger in doing that. People like a certain finality, and they deserve a certain finality. The trouble is, with a human mind, there is no finality. There is no certainty. I could change my mind any minute. I'm not gonna, but that's the danger of trying to cover all the bases and having like a very honest relationship with your supporters. I think most of them got the right end of the stick. God, I waffle so. How long is this podcast? 7 hours. I'm so sorry, Andy. At least you can chop me down when I'm on the Birthday Cake website.
It's kind of like a wrestling retirement, really, isn't it? Where they say, I'm retiring on this date, and then they come back like a year later. But like you say as well, with the internet, it's quite strange to have people be so on your side, really. Yeah.
There's a huge awareness of mental health at the moment, isn't there? Which is great. And even though, I tried purposely not to evoke that phrase because, again, I didn't want it to look like, a cry for help or like I'm suffering because, I'm not in any trouble. I'm fine. And in fact, if anything, I did it because I could see that I was maybe heading for a difficult place, and I pulled up the reins before I got there. Whereas with the band, I had a breakdown almost, And so I recognized the signs, and I was like, oh, I'm going to pause it here before I get into trouble, But nevertheless, people are still very conscious of, you got to stay happy and you got to put yourself first. So I'm glad that we're living in that era. It's a great era to be alive.
And it certainly wasn't the case when Reuben finished, I imagine.
No, there wasn't so much understanding, and the internet was very young, and social media was very young. It was a different landscape, and I have trouble working out when that band finished because, again, it finished in my mind, in 2005. and then it finished in reality like a few years later. But then we did the rarities compilation, and we were still sort of working together, even though the band was finished. And even now, we're always working. I'm always talking to the guys about, whatever reissue, or we've got, another £5 has come through from that CD. So it's sort of it stayed rumbling on. We're all still in contact, and it's difficult to put a final stop to these things.
So, I mean, it came with the announcement that this was all, you weren't going away, like you've said, and that you were leading up to an official fan club. So whilst a Patreon doesn't seem as cool as the sort of thing, we used to have in the past, when you'd have these fan clubs that were like send a stamped address into a PO box or what have you, you've made it a little bit like a mail order fan club of old. Was this the sort of thing that you were into when you were a kid? Did you have like fan clubs and...
Oh my God, absolutely. I was a member of the Thundercats fan club. I was a Thunder Warrior, and I'd get stuff through the post. And I remember once I signed my friend up to the Lego fan club I think it was for free. And they sent her like Lego every month for the rest of her life. It was great. And that used to happen a lot. And obviously the Beano fan club, I think I was in the Beano fan club. I definitely got the badges. And that's how the label sold it to me. I've got to be clear here that the idea for the Patreon was not my idea. I didn't want to. I had to be convinced. And again, that was a very gradual process. Kev from Big Scary Monsters would bring it up at intervals, and I would say, no. And then when I had a meeting with him to tell him that I was quitting. And he took it so well because, for a label at a Big Scary Monsters size, to hear that one of your acts is not going to tour anymore. That's how they sell a lot of their records on tour at that kind of indie level. And he took it so well, but then I think he knew he had this Patreon in his back pocket, right? So he used it as leverage. He's like, well, look, how about maybe this is time for the Patreon I've been talking about, and we can do it more like a fan club, and you get badges and you get a certificate. He knows me. He knows my angle. And so he got me at a weak moment, and I said, yeah. I mean, to be fair, he sold it to me. He said, look, we'll do it. I'll take care of it. Kev takes care of it. All I have to do is send him the content, and then he disseminates it. He's in charge of the website, and I have quite minimal contact with it because I was frightened. I'd heard horror stories from people like Charlie Simpson and Andy from Arcane Roots as well, that it's sort of... I mean, Charlie had to take a bit of time off of his because it was overwhelming. And those are the horror stories that it kept me from it. And Kev said, no, just keep it very low impact. If you promise, if you're very clear about what you're delivering, a song a month, a drawing every 2 months, then everyone will be cool with that. And I think everyone is cool with that. And I've been very straight down the line and said, look, I quit music to concentrate on acting and modeling and presenting and voice work. I can't replace the time I was spending on music with this whole Patreon thing. I need time to pursue these other avenues. So I think everyone's cool with it, but it was not my idea. And initially I was very hesitant. But it seems to be chugging away pretty good. People seem to be enjoying it. I'm enjoying it.
That's the main thing. I do think as well, because they're merch machines, I do think a BSM shirt that said Kev Calls It would be a good idea if you want to pitch that to him. Oh, there's the dog. Yeah, we spied you ages ago doing a video for Men's Health Online.
Yes.
And you've said that you want to focus on that sort of thing. Has it been rewarding to also have these opportunities follow where, you can do acting and voiceover work and the kids' books again?
The phrase that I'm using, because, when you hang out with people you haven't seen for a while and everyone says, what you doing? And you have to say, oh, well, quit music, and you have to take them through the rigmarole. And what I've ended up saying, the little phrase, is that I'm now on the bottom rung of a different ladder, having come from the lofty heights of the middle of the music ladder, shall we say. I'm now right at the bottom of the acting, modelling, presenting ladder. I got a little bit of experience. I did bits and bobs, like you say, along the way, because it's kind of an adjacent industry. But really, I'm nobody in that industry, that new industry. So there hasn't been much, to be honest. When did I sort of really made the public decision? I said, look, I'm out here in February, which is maybe coming up for 3 months ago, which isn't a really long time. But I've already had a bit of work. I signed to a modelling agency last month, and they got me a job pretty much straight away. I'm up for a couple more. Every other day I'm auditioning for some kind of bit of bob. So it's kind of, I'm in the machinery of it. But, it's too early to tell, really, if it's going to be another great career. I would hope so. Certainly in terms of the children's books, I've had the least time to look at that because whilst all this is going on, I still do have my job with Doctor Who magazine that we spoke about briefly, which takes up a very minimal amount of my time, but I'm not just, staring at a wall. There's always something to do, and recently there's been this book as well, which I've been doing, and all of these things, particularly the book, was something that I was trying to do for years, and like albums and tours would just get in the way. And it's not like, well, I suppose I did eventually sacrifice the albums and the tours for getting the book off the ground, because 2 albums since I first had the idea to do the book, and now I've just got space. I've just got space to do all the stuff that I've been meaning to do for ages. So the acting, the modelling, the presenting, that's all part of it. So that will come, I hope, and is already a little bit there. But then the book is something you have to make happen for yourself.
So the book itself, this bloody dog. Let me pop the dog out. Is that all right?
Pop him out.
And this is where you can say all these secret things that you don't want me to.
Okay.
Very, very quick.
Sure. I actually have birthday cake for breakfast quite regularly. A lot. If there's a cake on special in the supermarket down from like £12, sometimes to like £2 or £3, I just buy the whole cake and I eat it for breakfast. Me and the missus have a little tea party.
You're safe. I didn't hear anything.
Okay, some surprises in there for you.
He's a little sweetie pie, but he's an absolute terror when it's me in the house trying to do these records.
Oh my God, that's fine.
I mean, it's great, isn't it? But still very annoying. Yeah, so the book itself, 400 plus pages, which is a mammoth undertaking, I imagine. But it does come with the fact that it's almost like an art book as well, isn't it, at the same time? Words and art. So it's kind of like almost like a coffee table book, but at the same time.
No, it's don't get the wrong idea. It is a coffee table book. It's an art book. There's barely any words in it. It's not my autobiography by any stretch. It's 396 pages of just pictures, and then a couple of pages of notes at the back. That's it. There's a little preface at the start of each kind of chapter to say this is what I was doing. And then it's a lookbook, buddy. It is very definitely designed to be a coffee table book through and through, yeah.
So it's called The Skeletons and Skylines, or just Skeletons and Skylines, 25 years of art, design, and rock and roll. I do think Jamie Lenman's lookbook would be a better title, but again, it's already gone to print now.
It's already gone to print.
But BSM, they seem pretty much, as you've touched on before, they seem pretty much open to whatever you want to do, really, or they've got their own, vision with the Patreon. Is it great just having Kevin Co be like, so supportive and wanting to go along with like a book or whatever you want to do? Yes,
they're wonderful, really. And I was looking the other day at the Extra Mile website. Someone came up on Extra Mile. I did a few albums with Extra Mile, and I did 2 Reuben records, and then I did my first solo album with Extra Mile. And, for a long time, I thought they were going to be my label, and I didn't really think about moving labels. And then, we moved around a bit. And I seem to have stuck with Big Scary Monsters just because Kev so rarely says no. I think he said no to me like once or twice. But every other time, whatever wacky idea I've got, he says, yeah, let's give it a go. Even if it ends in almost disaster like that Covers record. I have to hide my eyes when I look at the balance sheets when that comes through. In fact, he says, don't look at this one. He gives me all the figures for all my records, and he says, don't look at the shuffle one. Keep going. But, we had fun, and we made some great art, and neither of us bankrupt. So, yeah, Kev and Josie. I got to give huge props to Josie, who is Kev's right-hand lady, and latterly Dave, who's moved companies, actually. But Dave was a big part of the team for a long time. And Connor, and Madam Douch and Little Ron the dog. But Kev and Josie are the dream team. Yeah, it's very receptive. I never know if it's because Kev is personally like a fan of what I do, or if it's because he just knows that there's that groundswell of, a few hundred people that will always buy it. I think he's a money man. He's a great business person. I think he said to me at that meeting where I said, I'm quitting, Kev. And he said, you should do the Patreon. He said, you're too good to just go away. which was a sweet thing of him to say. And even if he was just had pound signs in his eyes, it worked on me. So I think Kev probably likes the stuff. I mean, Kev, the only reason I ever make something, particularly with things like the Reuben reissues, let's say, bring out a record on a vinyl, or the Muscle Memory vinyl that we did, people would look at that and say, it's a giant vanity project. And it is, let's face it. The thing is that I guess anything you do as a solo artist is going to be a vanity project to some degree. That's a conundrum I hadn't really considered. But the same with the book. It's 400 pages. It's chunky. It's like the spine is like 4 centimeters. I mainly did it because I wanted a copy. That's always at the root of, and even back in the band, like when it came to designing like t-shirts, we would think like, what t-shirt do I want one of for me? And I think if you're moving forward with that in mind, you can't ever really cheat people, because I'm very aware of how much these things cost to buy, and we live in a digital age where you can just nick it if you want. Especially with the physical packages, they're, upwards of £30 now. But people still buy them, and it's because they're quality, and they're quality because I make them with me in mind, because I would want it. So my biggest fear is ripping people off. From everything I ever do, I'd hate to abuse the trust that's been built up between me and my audience, and I think they know that. But still, there is a sticky moment between me saying, hey, everyone, pre-order the book. Honestly, it's going to be great. I hadn't actually seen a copy at that point. And I only saw the copy a few days later when it arrived. And then I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. So now I can really say, seriously though, get a copy of this. But it's always done from the point of view of like, what would I want on my record shelf? And even as far as what would I want to hear, there's even a line in the song, isn't there? I turn the radio on and I imagine what I'd like to hear on it. That's always been how I approached it. Like, what do I want to listen to? You've got to make it. If it doesn't already exist, you've got to make it. That's sort of how I do things. I think that question got away from me and I apologise. Sorry.
Would you say, by the sounds of it, because obviously Kev being a nice guy, and
I didn't say he was a nice guy. don't put words in my mouth.
But wanting to make money, but also being very, complimentary and such. Do you think that it's probably the same for him, really? As a label, they say we want to put stuff out that we want to listen to or read or what have you.
Yes, I think that is, but mind you, that's what most labels will say. Certainly, most indie labels, they'll say, look, we put out music that we want to put out. We champion bands that we think should be heard. And Rick, I had a barbecue with Rick, who put out Reuben's first EP. He came around on the weekend and we talked about that. He had a very small record company that he was updating the news page on the Three Colors Red website when he was a student. And for this, EMI paid him like thousands of pounds because no one knew about website backdoors or anything. This was the infancy of the internet. And so with that money, this kid, he was 17, 18, instead of buying himself like a speedboat and a gold suit, he decided to spend it all on, releasing records by these local bands, making great records, and they were always well designed and they always had a flavour, one of which was us. I was so jealous of Caretaker, who had, I think that was the first ever Bad Music release, was the Caretaker EP, the first one, then there were a couple of singles, and oh my God, I wanted to be on Bad Music so bad, and I didn't bully him, what's the word I'm looking for, I didn't pressure him. I just entreated to him, please, Rick, you should please put out our EP. And he wasn't easy. He wasn't an easy sell. He'd say, no, I'm not into it. No, I'm not into it. Until finally he saw the one show. He's like, yeah, fair enough, let's do it. But he, like Kev, and in fact, Rick reminds me of Kev a lot, or Kev reminds me of Rick. And Rick says this as well, that Kev has a similar dynamic. They just care about music. And Extra Mile would say the same thing. You'd hope that rings true. I think the further up you go, it does become more about money, more money, more problems. But certainly at Kev's level and at Rick's level, it's done for the love of the thing, which you've just got to respect. But then, but the bottom line is, it's got to make a profit. And if Kev says to me, Jamie, I really don't think your box of 7 7-inches, each with an individual track of shuffle on each side, with hand-drawn artwork in like a deluxe set, I think that's going to sink our ship. We're not doing it. As cross as I was, I knew he was right. And at the time, I was eating the pizza that he had paid for, so I felt like I couldn't really argue. So the bottom line, it's got to make money, or at least it's got to not lose money against the whole portfolio. He's someone like Kev has got a portfolio of hundreds of releases at any one time. Some of them can lose a bit, shuffle. Some of them can make a lot of money, Delta Sleep, and some are in the middle. Do you know what I mean? That's how Extra Mile could afford to throw away money on my double album of jazz and thrash, because they had Frank Turner putting out. I'm fairly sure every other act on that label is funded through Frank Turner, and there's nothing wrong with that, because Frank's making the music that he wants to make, and then it enables these other artists to have a platform. That's what Frank is all about, and that's what I'm all about. I'm much further down. Again, we're back to the ladders. Frank's on the top of that ladder, right? And I'm sort of in the middle going, hey, in my own kind of small way. So Frank has his Lost Evenings, doesn't he? Yes, it's Lost Evenings. I played one where he picks all the acts and he gets all his buddies on, and I've been on. I've been Frank's buddy. And then I have my Lenmania, which is like a smaller version. And we're both in our way using our platform, such as it is, to feed back into the scene. Frank's very about that, and so am I. We come from the same scene. So we're very much about shouting out to emerging talent and putting it back into the scene, as it were. I love Frank. If this was a podcast about Frank Turner, I could just talk about how wonderful he is for hours and hours and hours.
This is sadly not the Frank Frank Turner podcast or the Beatles podcast, but it could be. It's certainly the dog barking in the garden podcast, so he's now in the house.
Oh, that's my third favorite podcast. And by the way, anyone out there, if there is a Frank Turner podcast, have me on. I've got all the juice on Frankie. Come on, I'll be your stellar guest. I can't get on the Red Dwarf podcast for life nor money, but the Frank Turner one, I'm a sure shot.
Red Dwarf podcast not coming.
Well, no, it's for comedians. So the two people that do it, they have like a different comedian every week. And fair enough, I don't fit. I'm not a comedian. But I do like Red Dwarf, so I fill half of that brief. And there's a lot of Red Dwarf episodes, so you're going to run out of comedians at some point. They'll come begging around season 11. Yeah.
You're a funny guy. I'm sure they can get you on there. So on the last record, when we last spoke, you'd highlighted that some songs like Deep Down date back to your Reuben days. Did that put you in an archiving type mood that kind of made this book on the horizon in a sense, or was that kind of separate? Had you been wanting to do this book for a while?
No, I'm always in an archiving type mood, because ever since the band finished, people have been like asking about it, or there's like a reissue, or the very first thing that happened after the band split was that we did that rarities compilation. So straight from then I was looking through all the old tapes, and actually it was the rarities compilation was always my ultimate goal. I formed a band so we could split up and then put out a rarities, because the rarities compilation is always my favorite record. Nirvana's, what's it called? It's Zesticide. It's my favorite Nirvana record, and loads besides. So I've always been a bit of an archivist, and Guy as well from Reuben, he's got even more bits than I have, and I never throw anything away. And with my with all my artwork I do for magazines and print and everything, I keep all those. I don't know anyone who kind of throws them away, unless I give them as gifts, or I might sell them if I need to make the rent, or we sold a bunch of art to buy one of our pals a wheelchair one time. That's how they kind of disappear from you, or some of them dissolve. But basically I keep everything, because I'm a collector. You can see from me, it's very difficult to get me to throw things away. So no, I was always in an archiving mood, and I have trouble sleeping, so sometimes when I'm an insomniac, I would go through the files and be like, oh, that was cool, and sometimes you get reminded of something, like I was gonna do the artwork for this record, it didn't work out or whatever, and I go, oh yeah, and I take a look at it and think, well, it's a shame no one ever saw this. So that's kind of what the book's for, in the same way as the rarities compilation. Well, the rarities compilation is sort of all the weird little bits, whereas this book is the greatest hits as well. But there is a selection, a miscellaneous selection of stuff that doesn't really belong to any one period, and there's a lot of stuff that never got used. So I'm kind of always in that mindset, either arriving there myself, or because someone has asked, or whatever. It's an anniversary, I have to put something out. Have to. I don't have to, but it's nice to.
When we first spoke, if you can't remember Lenmania, you definitely won't remember this. It was at 2000 Trees, like almost a decade ago, maybe. I'm not sure. We spoke about your extracurricular activities and Doctor Who magazine, and you seemed, kind of taken aback by it, because I'm sure everyone was just asking you about Reuben that day. And we spoke about a swanky Guinness World Records do that you'd gone to with Doctor Who themed canapes and stuff like that. Your
Yeah.
your Instagram now, it seems a lot more shifted to that sort of thing, showing off your collections and toys that you've got and books and such. WWF Hasbro's and that mask toy that I coveted when I was young. Although I did have the one, with there was a lever on his back and you pushed his eyes out, which I thought was great.
Yes, no, I've got that here as well in the side. Yeah, he's tucked away, but he's in a red dressing gown.
Red dressing gown, yeah, I remember it
Yeah.
vivid. So has it been as well as, the Patreon, it doesn't feel like it's restricted to music particularly, and some of the drawings are comic book characters and such. Does that feel good as well to be able to kind of branch out and do that, but still be under your banner, so to speak?
Yes, I mean the only thing you won't find on my Instagram these days is music. That's the only thing that's not really going up because I'm not really doing it. But everything else, previously I had separate social medias for music and art because I used to be very frightened of people confusing the two, and that's why I never put my name on any of the Reuben artwork. I did it under a pseudonym.
Hmm.
So a lot of people don't even know it was me doing it. And whereas now, and also I used to do the cartoon for Roxanne magazine. I did that under a pseudonym as well. I don't know. I don't know why I did. I didn't want anything to pollute the music,
Hmm.
and I didn't want you to listen to those Reuben records, specifically the Reuben records, and think of the funny cartoon robot from Roxanne, or of the ludicrous drawing in Doctor Who magazine, right? But when I became a solo artist, that all changed. That all changed because I was just speaking for me, and one person can be all these things, and I kind of kept it separate for a long time. And then when I decided, I was ditching music, I thought, well, actually, now's the time to bring it all under one roof. And I don't have to be like Jamie Lenman, the musician, or Jamie Lenman, the artist. I'm just Jamie Lenman. And all the things I do and all the things I am that have always been poking at the sides. If you listen to my records, you're aware that I'm a big Doctor Who guy. You probably even know that I collect antique action figures. And I just thought, let's put that all in one channel. And maybe the effect, if you look at my Instagram, is that you might be a bit confused about what it is that I do. I'm fine with that. Scroll a bit and you'll find it. It just looks like I'm very busy, which I am. Yeah, I just thought, let's stop beating around the bush. I'm just Jamie Lenman. I'm not Jamie Lenman, the actor, Jamie Lenman, the musician, Jamie Lenman, the illustrator. I'm just this one thing, and I do a lot of stuff. And if you're smart enough to figure that out, if you are confused by variety, then oh well, never mind. But if you can dig into it, there's a lot of value there. God, I just said that about myself. There's a lot of value. Yeah.
This isn't the
Okay.
pitch to BSM, mate. It's
No. Okay.
So I liked something that you said about being so excited about drawing something that would actually go on a physical CD. And I think that's, such a interesting thing because some musicians might not have the artwork side of things, whereas obviously, whilst it was under a pseudonym, you were doing the Reuben records and such. To then have your artwork mass produced, you'd said, stuff available in shops was like, a frill. We spoke last time about the illustrious HMV placard that says your name and such. How was that back in the day? And not just back in the day, a couple of years ago, seeing your record and seeing artwork that's for something that you do, or even your own artwork in a HMV or a shop that these places, when you're a kid, are so vital.
It's difficult to explain. It's a bit like the word ambivalent means feeling two conflicting emotions at once, right? And people use it to mean indifferent because it sounds the same. So if I said I'm ambivalent about it, people might not think I give a shit. But what I mean when I say I'm ambivalent is that it's mind blowing, but it's also ordinary at the same time because I've got used to it, right? I'm in it through Doctor Who magazine. I'm in every newsagent in the UK all the time. I can walk into any newsagent and pick up, a piece of my artwork, and it's in the shop. And to a certain degree, my records as well. Not so much, but certainly in HMV, they got a copy of something, and in smaller chains, right? And so that is just ordinary. That's just my life, and I don't want to use the word blessed, but I am blessed. It was a lot of hard work, but there was a bit of luck as well. But at the same time that it's ordinary, it just is how it is, and it's how it has been for 20 years. It's also still mind-blowing. So I still get excited. So I know when I walk in the shop that I can find my latest record or my latest magazine, right? But then when I go and find it, because sometimes I do search it out, I pick it up and I go, wow, even though I know it's going to be there and I've seen it hundreds of times, I'm still so excited by it. And it's just like, you know, I didn't put that there. Someone else put that there. Someone else printed it and took it on a truck to John Menzies or wherever. So it's both. It's both ordinary and incredible. And that's the only way I can describe it. I'm not bored of it. I'm still just so thrilled. And I will never take it for granted, even though it is an everyday occurrence. Do you know what I mean?
I do find it strange. You mentioned John Menzies. I think you can buy vinyl in W.H. Smith's now.
Yeah.
You can buy some really obscure stuff as well. Like there's a Leeds noise rock band called Thank, and you can buy their 12-inch in W.H. Smith's of all places.
They're called Thank.
Thank, yeah.
Oh, that was the thing that we used to say in the band. I wonder where they've got that from. Thank. That's interesting. That was one of our little catchphrases. I mean, every now and then I'd be like, oh, that's obviously because they were listening to us. But you would be surprised how many bands have named themselves after, like, snatches of lyrics or whatever. I'd be interested to talk to the or find out like where Thank came from in their terminology. Mind you, the guy we got it from was kind of from sort of Leeds-ish, so maybe it's a Leeds thing. I'd love to know that. Yeah, I don't go into W.H. Smith's. It's like a prison. It's awful, isn't it? And everything costs like 7 times what you would pay anywhere else. And they're like, we're still W.H. Smith's. And you're like, yeah, but you got like Amazon. No, you don't. W.H. Smith's. And oh my God, no, I'm not going in there.
The only game in town if you're in the airport, though.
This is true. They got you by then.
You want a bottle of water, it's like 10 quid.
Yeah.
So what do you think of the way that, obviously you've just said about physicals, it seems crazy that magazines are even still a thing with the way, you know, things are. You know, not least the fact that vinyl has made a big comeback and CDs are still kicking. How do you feel about, you know, that whole state of things, whilst a lot of people are probably more interested in a digital thing and not really that bothered about physical?
Well, when you say a lot of people, you mean young people. And so a lot of this is generational. You know, nobody young is buying a fucking vinyl. I mean, Christ alive, you think the Zoomers even know what it is. And that's fine, and that's their thing, and they're the ones that are getting Taylor Swift to #1 on Spotify every single fucking time, and enjoy that soup, guys. It's a generational thing, definitely. And, you know, that's good as well, because I know that whereas before I would worry about, you know, putting out a record that's going to be 25, 30 quid. I'll be like, Jesus Christ, you've told us that back in the band days. I'd be like, are you crazy? Whereas now, I know that the majority of my owners, not all of them, I'm very pleased to say that actually, you know, I do have a broad age range, and some of my supporters, even on the Patreon, are teenagers, which is great to know that you can still appeal to outside of your own bubble. But most of them are kind of my age-ish, you know, which means they've probably got steady jobs, they've got disposable income. You know, it's not such a big deal for someone with a 9 to 5 to buy a record for 25 quid. I know I wouldn't. Jesus Christ, I can't afford that. I'm a struggling artist. But that's why I'm friends with a lot of record labels. They get it to the stockroom when they're not looking. But, you know, most people in their 40s have got disposable income. It's a different world, and it's still really not a world that I live in, to have that much disposable income. But I think that's, like I say, it's a generational thing. That's the thing for people in their 30s and their 40s. And if they want to buy like a 2-disc deluxe vinyl set with this free CD that I've just made, great, because that's who I made it for, you know. And if you're a kid and you saved up your pocket money to or whatever, your lunch, not your lunch money, your post round, do they still do news rounds? I don't know. But however you've got there, that just means you'll cherish it more. And I like save up for, like, you know, certain prestige items that I want, and then I get it, and you cherish it more. So it's all good. Whatever way you're getting it, it's good. I'm very surprised that we still have a physical media industry. I thought it was all going to be digital. And in fact, that's why the packaging for Muscle Memory when it first came out 10 years ago was so lavish, because I thought, right, this is the last one. From here on in, it's all going to be MP3s. And then Kev said, oh, we're going to do Devolver on CD. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? And I think Devolver sold more on CD than it did on vinyl. So I'm learning all the time. I have to leave that to the industry heads like Kev or like Doctor Who Magazine. You know, how is Doctor Who Magazine still in print? I don't know, but it is. They keep telling us that we're going to be out of a job any second. I spoke to you. I'd been to the Guinness World Book of Records for our 500th issue. I went to the party for the 600th issue this year, at the start of the year. We're still going. And everyone says, oh, this is, you know, say goodbye to that, won't see you next year. But like, we're still here. So who can say? I just write the stuff and I let everyone else worry about how it'll be disseminated, you know?
It is interesting that thing you said about CDs as well, because I know that people have said, who buys CDs, and a lot of artists will find that they still have to keep chucking CDs out because a lot of people, that's how they listen to music.
Wow.
Yeah, seems crazy.
I mean, I do. I'm in that group, but I thought I was an outlier. I'm obviously a fucking weirdo. Look at me. But and so it makes sense that I would listen to like CDs, on Windows 95. No one told you anything different. So sure, I'm not surprised that I listen to CDs, but I'm surprised that like normal people do. Wow.
We've been listening to the radio a lot recently because my partner bought a DAB radio.
Dude, that is retro.
But I'm amazed, not just that. We were like, oh yeah, we're going to be wanky BBC's Radio 6 people. And all we listen to is absolute 80s because it...
There you go. That's the way it goes. Next to be on wax cylinders.
Mental.
Yeah.
So back on CDs though. So with the Pilot EP, you said that you'd gained some inspiration for the design from a shopping bag that you'd seen in a friend's bedroom. Does inspiration for that sort of thing hit you like you can be out and about, like at a friend's house when you're a lot younger, I appreciate, and you can see someone and go, wow, that's a great idea? Or is it something that you kind of have to have a 9 to 5 thought process about?
Wow. Well, the best ones are the flashes of inspiration. Have you got a PDF of the book, by the way? Is that where you're getting all this from? Did Kev send you one? I'm not cross, but you have an amazing insight into it.
No, I've just done good research.
Okay. Because it says that little story about the bag. Yeah. I mean, when you're young, you're kind of nicking a lot of stuff, right? So I nicked a lot of that early stuff. The image on the bag, it wasn't the same at all. But it was like what I liked was that it was a thin rectangle in a square space. I just thought that was quite chic, and it had a sort of a cutout look to it. So I stole the approach rather than the actual design. And the thing with the little fire logo that everyone's got on their wrist, I literally saw that again on a poster on someone's wall at a party. So a lot of those. If you read the book, I've just now realized that a lot of the introductory chapters will be like, I saw this on a wall at a party. I saw this on a wall at a friend's house. And that's because that's what you do when you're a kid. You're wandering around at like house parties or chilling with your buddies or going to gigs, and you're hit with so much inspiration, and that slows down later on. And then this, I guess the skeletons thing, if we're going to take the next evolution, after we'd had the Pilot EP and after we'd done the little fire logo, the next big image was the red skeletons. And I'd always been interested in skeletons, and I was always drawing skeletons. And actually in the book you can see I did a single cover for another band, for one of our friends' band, that had skeletons on the front in a very similar way to Race Car. So it's like a practice for what later happened on Race Car. So there's, you got two things there. So you got the flash of inspiration, which you're talking about. You see something, you're like, I'm having that. But then you got the sort of the growing theme, the same way that, and to say this is not to equate myself in any way to Van Gogh, but he painted sunflowers his whole life. The artists, they paint various different versions. I think Munch did a few screams. Artists have themes, and while I'm not Van Gogh or Munch, I am an artist and I have a theme, and that's why I called the book Skeletons and Skylines, because for the longest time those two things would crop up again and again and again in my illustrations, and you can see in the book when you go through it, you're like, oh my god, there's another skyline. Oh, he's doing skeletons again. It's not particularly original, but they tend to be things that I fixate upon. And I even found, when I was going through the book, I found a piece from just a couple of years ago where some band had asked me to design something for them, and I'd done a skyline, another skyline, and I was like, oh shit, man, I still haven't got it out of my system. And then I did another skeleton for the cover of the book. I went back to the original way of doing it, just out of like red card, just because I thought there was a nice symmetry to that, and I really enjoyed that. So I'll never stop doing skeletons and skylines. They'll crop up again, I'm sure.
To finish, you previously said in an interview that you're Reuben's biggest fan because, we kind of, when we've spoke with you in the past, we kind of try and shy away from this sort of thing because we're...
But if you're going to ask the question I think you're going to ask, this really is the end of the interview. So choose your next words carefully.
No, you're actually going to like this question, I think.
Okay.
You've said Reuben was and still is your favourite band of all time.
Yes.
For us, we've always tried to focus on you rather than Reuben because, number one, that's... You don't want to just go into an interview and say, when are you doing this again? When are you doing this again? With the Patreon, with the book, and, with the archiving and what have you, do you think this is finally the one thing that will get people off your back about Reuben? Or do you think that'll just be a forever thing now?
It's a forever thing. Forever. Nothing I will ever do will satisfy. Because, and here's why, and I've spent so much time thinking about it, and even when I launched the book, I put up a little post of me on the cover saying, hey, big news tomorrow. And straight away, my pages were just flooded with people saying, oh, wow, this must mean Reuben. I can't go out my front door without people saying, oh, it must mean that Reuben's getting back together, even though he's consistently said for 20 fucking years, every single day, that's never going to happen. He must have been lying. And this is, you know what I mean? Because it's quite insulting that people think you're lying. No, nothing will ever make that question go away, because here's why it will never go away. Because the answer that people want when they ask it is never going to come, right? People ask that question because they want my answer to be next week. But because my answer is always never, they will continue to ask it until they get the answer they want, which they will never get. Therefore, they'll continue to ask. And that's the trap that I'm trapped in. And if you told me when I was, 16 or whatever, one day you're going to be in a band and people are going to love it so much that it's going to follow you around for the rest of your life, and people are never going to stop asking about that band, and it's going to piss you off, I wouldn't have believed you. The thing is, you made a point when you asked me this question that Reuben are my favourite band, right? I am the biggest Reuben fan. You think you like Reuben. You don't like him as much as I do. I love him to death. And I wish people understood that more. Because it's not that I don't want to talk about Reuben. I'd love to talk about Reuben. And I've got stories, But people can't quite understand why you would love something but not want to repeat it. They cannot grasp that. And I've used this example before. I watched an interview with the cast of Nightmare. Do you remember Nightmare, that TV show for kids? They interviewed the cast, and they interviewed all the cast, and then at the end of the interview, they asked all the cast the question, if Nightmare came back, would you like to do it? And they all said, yes, absolutely, I'd love to. And then the one guy who played Pickle the Elf, who was really great, he said no. He said, I love Nightmare, and I still love it. I loved doing it. It's beautiful, but I wouldn't want to do it again. And I just thought, it's possible to love something but not want to repeat yourself, and that is something that no one seems to grasp, and I can't. I've tried every which way of making people understand it, that I still love it, still want to do it again, So that's a real shame, because I think that stops either people come straight in with the question, when are you going to do it again? And I get cross and walk out, or they leave the subject alone completely, thinking, oh, he hates that band. No, I love that band. I constructed them with my buddies to be the perfect band for what I would want, which is honesty and all this stuff and, interesting music. So I love them, but I forget what the question was. But no one's ever going to stop asking the question, and I have to make my peace with that. But sometimes it isn't easy. And sometimes it actively gets in the way of other things I'm trying to do, and that's when I get crossed. It's oh man, I'm trying to move forward here, and you're still tugging me back to where I was 20 years ago. That's when I get frustrated. But I don't mind looking back as long as it doesn't stop. Look back, don't stare, right? I think that's Nile Rodgers. That's good, right? Look back, don't stare.
Compared yourself to Van Gogh, Munch, and Nile Rodgers.
God, Nile Rodgers, yeah.
And Pickles the Elf.
Okay, and Pickles the Elf.
But no, that's great, Jamie. Thank you very much for coming on the Frank Turner podcast.
Yeah, I love Frank Turner.
No, that's great, man. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Did you get all you wanted? Was there too much waffle? What are you saying?
No, not at all. That was perfect.
I don't want you to think that I don't know who you are. I mean, I remember particularly. I thought the last interview we did was when we did the bunk beds in Manchester. That's the one that sticks in my memory. But of course, I'm not who's this dickhead? Yeah, like Andy from Birthday Cake for Breakfast, with the little dog and the hat.
Dickhead.
Always. So please, it's just my mind was utter scrambled eggs at Lenmania 3, so I'd temporarily forgotten that. You're very important to me.